I cannot believe this. The Toronto Blue Jays in their season opener, their home opener of what was supposed to be a fantastic season to come, they get absolutely rocked, losing 12-2 in a game that saw some positives, but the pitching staff absolutely struggle against a Baltimore Orioles team that came in ready to play. We're going to break that down as well as discuss a couple comments from John Schneider following the brutal game. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. But before we get into it, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I know it's a rough game, but if you're excited for the season to come, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the daily content. Ladies and gentlemen, I was at this game, and it wasn't the season opener, and it wasn't the game that I was hoping for. The opening day ceremonies took a very long time just for them to get absolutely destroyed. But let's dive into it a little bit here. It was an interesting game. There's a lot of takeaways from it, even though, of course, the Jays are at a point now where they need to win these games, especially when you look at around the AL East, and a lot of the other teams played very, very well. And you look at it from the Jays' perspective. Let's go through the box score. Bichette was hitless, Santander was hitless, Springer was hitless, and Ernie Clement was also hitless. So it was an interesting one. And we're going to dive into, of course, Andres Gimenez, who was the best player on the field today. But also, of course, Alan Roden, who had a very good game. And he actually looks like he's going to be a lot better than we may have thought, especially earlier on in the season. But let's dive into some of the positives here. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had a couple walks today, and there was some hard hit balls off Zach Eflin, but the difference was in this game, simply Baltimore Orioles crushed the Toronto Blue Jays' mistakes, and the Jays didn't crush the mistakes of Zach Eflin, even though they were close a couple times. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had a couple walks. Andres Gimenez looked absolutely fantastic out there, and there wasn't many balls in play that weren't home runs, so we didn't really get to see him defensively besides, of course, the tandem of Alejandro Kirk and Andres Gimenez when early in the game, Alejandro Kirk threw out a runner and a great tag by Andres Gimenez. We're going to be seeing that all season long. But, of course, he had he had one hit, one strikeout, but his hit was a home run, which is something, out of all the players on the Jays in this lineup, the person you probably expect the least to get a home run was Andres Gimenez. Especially coming into the game, there was a lot of discourse about him being in that cleanup role. He was. And ultimately, he played very, very well and had the best game out of anybody in tonight's game. As it pertains to George Springer, he did have a walk, but he didn't look fantastic either. Not much hard contact from him. Will Wagner had a hit, and he almost had another hit as well. And I think the tandem of Will Wagner and Alan Roden are going to be guys who get in the lineup almost every single day. And I'm very curious to see how John Schneider handles the lineup tomorrow. I'm going to dive into that a little bit later in the video. But, of course, Alan Roden, or Will Wagner looked very good out there. He looked very comfortable. Could have easily had two hits, hit a rocket that was unfortunately to one of the Baltimore Orioles outfielders. And then Alan Roden was kind of, the guy who probably had the best at-bats tonight total. Of course, Vladdy had a couple walks. Andres Gimenez had the home run. But Alan Roden, obviously, he had a single, but he also had a walk. And a lot of his at-bats, they were all, compared to other players in the team, by far the best at-bats there. And it is going to be interesting to see where they put him in the lineup in tomorrow's games. Again, it's baseball. There's turnaround times. The Jays have 7 games or something like that to start, 7 or 8 games to start the season without a break. So you had to flip the card. And, of course, they got destroyed today, which we'll dive into. But you just had to be able to flip it and move on to the next one. And the big conversation of this game was José Berríos. He, and the Jays in general, but especially José Berríos, has a problem when it comes to giving up home runs. José Berríos gave up the second most home runs in the MLB, I believe it was last year, and he gave up 3 of them in tonight's game. One of them in the first inning to Adley Rutschman, who had 2 home runs. And it's going to be hard to win, almost impossible to win any game where you put up, when your pitchers give up 12 runs and put up a 12 earned run stat line. It is, that was the big issue in tonight's game, was the pitching. And you had Richard Lovelady coming out in the 5th inning, Jacob Barnes, the 2 guys. Chad Green gave up a 2-run home run. Even Yariel Rodriguez continued his struggles here and played really poor. It was it was a demolition from the Baltimore Orioles. And it's at the point now where, again, it's the first game of the season. It's not a huge deal. But at the same time, you still have 161 more games to go out there and play. And the biggest question mark is going to be this starting pitching staff. And José Berríos, he, again, for another opening day starter, he struggled in last year. He had decent outing, 6 innings and then 2 runs. The year before that was very, very bad for him. And then today was not quite as bad as his 2022 opening day, but it wasn't great either. And going back to what the Jays actually need here, they need their starting pitcher to be good. That is going to be the biggest question mark. You have a lot of guys who can be good, but also their floor is a little bit low. You think about Chris Bassett, he could put up, in a down year, 4.5 or 4 or 4.5 ERA. José Berríos, he's a couple years removed now, but he had a very bad season, and this isn't to be, a few years ago. This isn't to be, negative necessarily, but the biggest question mark going forward is going to be their pitching staff, and obviously their bullpen is also going to be a big question mark, but they weren't really using their high leverage guys. You had Chad Green come in fairly early, Yariel Rodriguez, their long inning guy. He looked really bad. Nick Sandlin looked good in the ninth inning. If there was something to take away at that point, most people were checked out. But as it pertains to that, you're going to need José Berríos and specifically Kevin Gausman tomorrow to bounce back before, of course, Max Scherzer on Saturday. So for the pitching staff, you got to just move on. 12 runs. They crushed every single mistake, and that was the difference in this game. And then on the Blue Jays hitting side, you also need to bounce back. There was a lot of mistakes from Zach Eflin. I do think Zach Eflin had a pretty good game. The ump was squeezing the Jays a little bit there in the first inning, but it came to the point where the Jays missed a few by inches. Bo Bichette was an inch away from hitting a 2-run home run that would have made it 6-4. That would have changed the landscape of the game there. I believe it was in the 5th or 6th inning. That gets caught, and then from there, of course, the Orioles come back. So that 5th inning home run would have been a game changer. You have Vladdy hit the ball hard a couple times. Alejandro Kirk had the ground ball double play, which is a little bit unfortunate. It was a interesting game, and one that gave a little bit of semblance to the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays. And coming into the game, you look at the lineup now, I don't think this remains the lineup tomorrow. You are going up again against a solid pitcher, but nothing too crazy. But I think at this point, it's going to be interesting to see where they actually put Alan Rodin in the lineup, because I don't think he needs to be fourth. I do ultimately think, I don't think he needs to be in the 9-hole. Again, this was his first time playing against a major league hitter. It's his first major league hit, so shout out to him on that. You're going up against Charlie Morton tomorrow, the right-hander. I think you put Alan Rodin higher in the lineup. Is it first? I don't know. Maybe you slide Alan Rodin up to first this early. You put Bichette in cleanup. You move everybody else down a spot, because I did think Andres Jimenez looked fairly solid, so you don't want to demote him too far. You put him down into the 5-hole, but I don't think having Wagner, Clement, Rodin, yes, it's a very good bottom of the order, but you need to get guys on base more, and Bo Bichette failed to do that today, although he hit the ball hard a few times, and same with Santander. He's going to be a guy who doesn't hit for a ton of average, but hopefully gets his feet under him a little bit and hit some home runs there soon. And it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do specifically with the starting lineup, given the fact that they're going up against a lot of righties in this series, and you have a guy like Alan Rodin ready to go. You have a guy like, of course, Will Wagner, two of the lefties. Maybe they give Nathan Lucas a start in center field. George Springer looked great in center field. He had a diving play. Even Santander made a nice running play, but over halfway through the game in left field. I think the outfield looked fine. You need offense. They just failed to do it, and their pitching staff let them down a little bit as well. But regardless of José Berríos having a bad game, you're not going to win many games scoring 2 runs on 4 hits. It's just not going to happen. And you look at John Schneider here. He came out and said that's 2 3-run homers with 2 outs. That's tough to come back from, and they didn't miss mistakes. Everybody's going to get mistakes over the course of a game. Today, they didn't miss them, and the final score is the final score. So it's ultimately what it comes down to, is that it was the final score. They lost. It doesn't really, losing 12-2 is the same technically as losing 2-1, but it was some of the other things. The fact that José Berríos gave up a ton of hits, gave up a ton of runs, and specifically the Jays gave up 6 home runs, which is not a winning strategy, especially when you go out and at least we got to see 1 home run. Vladdy looks comfortable to play. I still think Bo's going to have a breakout year, but it's going to be one that is very, very interesting. It's going to be curious to see what happens going forward. But that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. The Jays are back at it tomorrow. It's a good thing about baseball. It's a quick turnaround. So thank you guys for watching. See you later.